How
Hi,
are you
Haley.
both?
Good.
Good.
Good. How are you?
Lovely to meet you.
Yeah, great to meet you.
You.
Yeah. Great to
Um,
meet you.
so I really thought the documentary was quite beautiful. So thank you for sharing that with the world and Adam for sharing your story. What I wanted to ask first was, Amy, what made you want to record, like, not like and document so much of your kids' lives even before coming up with the documentary idea?
Mm. Well, it's kind of my passion through life to film my family and film things around me. I come from a visual art background, and I always felt like filming was something to kind of help me hold on as time was passing so quickly through my life. So the camera, even when I was a teenager, was something that I always had with me. And I made scrapbooks when I was a kid. It's been kind of my constant through my life.
That's lovely. And then, Adam, do you feel like it's been passed down onto you? Because throughout the documentary, we witness you get a camera and like start to film yourself. Do you feel like that's that came from that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of just grew up being used to being filmed by my mom for our own personal archive, basically, as a family. And so when I got a camera when I was in high school, it was also like during such a big transition time just in general for me, and I just found myself really wanting to capture the life that was going on around me and the ways that my life was about to change as well. So yeah, I think it's been passed down, and I definitely don't film as much, but I want to be able to capture what is going on around me.
Yeah. How do you, for both of you, how do you both feel knowing that the other is so passionate about capturing the precious moments in your lives?
Um, well, I just feel like it's something very very natural to me. I write, and I feel like observing the world around me and observing myself, um, and the way that other people's perceptions of myself, kind of fit into my life is just something that's intriguing for me to not only watch happen in real time, but like somehow capture, whether that's in writing or on film. And so I feel like I really understand it from your perspective, Mom, because it's something that just like intrigues me in the way that my life moves.
Mm. Yeah, one of the things that I say in the film, which I feel very is very accurate, is that filming helps me hold on to something while also letting it go. Because if it's or photographing, I mean, I actually come from more of a photography background, and film is a more recent thing for me. But to document something is to hold on to it. But then it also is kind of alleviating in a way to be able to then move on because you've captured it in some way, and then you can let it go.
Yeah. In the capturing of it, and I feel like there's more space to share these like stories like yours, Adams, and in the world, and you in sharing yours, you've like opened it up for more people to hopefully feel comfortable. Do you think that you would have wanted to share your story in a way or have figured it out a different way to do it had your mom and had you not been filming so much of your childhood?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, part of the reason why I think we made this film, why I felt like I really wanted to make this film, is just because, I remember being a teenager and being younger than a teenager, and wanting to see stories about children who are like me, who are trans like me, and who are also just growing up in life and navigating changes that every child navigates, whether they're they happen to be trans or queer or not. Um, and so, as I became an adult, and if we hadn't had this footage, I would have still felt strongly that I wanted to kind of put my story out there, or a story like mine out there into the world, so that you know it existed more in a public sphere, because we we I still have trouble finding stories like that for myself, and I know I did definitely when I was younger. So that representation and space is important to me to contribute to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one thing I love about our collaboration is that we each have different strengths. Adam's strength is really through his writing and his music, and my strength is more through the visual. And so we complement one another in our collaboration.
For sure. You can feel it throughout the film too, like how over the footage and like over your going from a child into an adult, you can see how it starts becoming not smoother because it is, of course, your own family footage, but just it feels like you can feel the transition as you both grow and as well as while like making the film.
Mm,
Right.
thank you.
Yeah. And I think in that kind of the smoothness that you notice in the arc of the film, I think it's a lot of it is also comes from, like, at least for me, Mom, like my own sense of maturity and my own sense of understanding, like progressing, and myself figuring out, and you can see it in real time in the footage, figuring out how I want to be, in the world as a man and as a trans man, and, you know, just growing in that comfortability, basically.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And also a lot of the film, the early part of the film is built from my what I call motherhood archive, which is, uh, because I am at heart kind of an archivist. All of my footage from the family that honestly was all filmed without the intention of actually making a film. I wasn't a filmmaker at that point. I was a visual artist and a mother documenting their family, and so a good portion of the footage is really seen through that lens of family archives.
Yeah, I feel like the film itself and like the way in which you had the archive footage, it's special because I don't think you get that often. And so being able to share your story is not only adding to like representation, but it also just feels more genuine and you can see how you slowly start coming into yourself, Adam, and just it feels a lot more personal. Like not that it wouldn't have been, but it's just I feel like you've lucked out and you've shared a beautiful story in the way in which you were able to. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Since it did come from a bunch of archive footage, apologies. And Adam, you wrote it, right? And
Mhm.
what was that like? Because instead of like writing a documentary like flat and then going to film it, how was it having everything and figuring out what to do with it?
Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting, and it was a process that I loved, and was not always straightforward. So, we had all of this footage and, like, all of these, like, transcripts of conversations that I had had with my parents and stuff, and obviously they're not always like simple conversations and simple
Mhm.
footage. And so I had to go back and revisit that, and, think about really the questions that came up from me in the time of this footage, because when it's all going on in real time in life, you're not really making meaning from it. You are a little bit maybe, but I think a lot of that comes from retrospect, figuring out how you're feeling in a moment, and thinking, for me it was a lot of thinking about, like, how I balance my memories and perceptions of myself with versus other people's and my family's perceptions of myself. And so I had to go back and look at all of that, and then figure out, because we wanted my voice to be more directly in the narrative than just my teenage voice from the footage. Um, and I wanted to be, in control of the narrative more in that way, in the way that I speak in voiceovers in the journals. So I had to, I think, really just reflect on myself and the questions I had in growing through school and with my family, um, which didn't always have to do with my transition. There were many, many other things just with friends and school and frustrations of home or love of home and having to leave home, like for college. Um, all of those themes, are are very personal and deep and take a long time to reflect on. And so the writing for the film, I think, came from just a lot of drafts and thought and time of just of thinking about what all of that meant to me.
Yeah.
We also had an interesting process where initially Adam just I dealt mainly with the visual. Adam didn't look at the footage. He looked through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of transcripts of
Mm-hmm.
conversations and things that so he was very much bringing he was working on it from a language perspective, and I was working on it from a visual perspective.
Yeah. And originally the writing was much more kind of poetic and like uh, expansive. It wasn't as direct as like the journal entry narratives, where I'm very much speaking from like the role of myself. Uh, it was more, I guess, up in the air, and then we decided to shift and have the journal entries because it just felt more genuine to my voice at the time in the footage. And I had gone through old journals of mine from high school, and picked out moments that actually happened and kind of rewrote them into something that would fit into like a small voiceover. So
Do you think because throughout the documentary, you see, um, its transitioning is not easy for sure, and not every, I feel like I'm not, I don't want to speak for you or your parents, but I feel like there was more of an understanding there. And especially for you and your mom, like you could feel a connection between the two of you and like a closeness, even though there were struggles along the way. Do you think that in making the documentary, it helped like not like round it off, but like in any way, if you know what I mean, the process, like the what you and your family went throughout your growing up and transitioning.
yeah, I mean, I know that like in the writing process, for example, when going through these transcripts, it actually allowed me to think a lot more about my parents' perspectives, like my mom's perspective, and the the attachments and kind of expectations that they had built from my early years, from memories of myself that I don't even remember. Um, and when I was a teenager, I didn't have a lot of patience for that because I was a teenager and I wanted to have my own life and have everyone take me seriously, which happened, and I'm very grateful that happened. And also, I think in the process of making this film, particularly in the writing process for me, I learned a lot about understanding other people's processes and how acceptance is crucial and also a process of time, and it doesn't have to be so like simple, basically.
Hmm. I mean, ultimately, the film is about unconditional love,
Mhm.
and there's a universal passage for all families, for all parents of learning to let go of expectations and embrace your child for who they are. And that's not just a narrative for parents with trans kids, that's a narrative for all parents. And the film shows, that there's always a process for everybody. It's never like immediate acceptance or immediate embracing. The family itself is in transition, and we're all processing together, but also respecting each other's processes, and ultimately expressing, unconditional love.
Yeah, for sure. That definitely comes across in the film. So thank you both very much for hopping on today to talk about it, and for Adam for sharing your journey as well. And I really hope that
Absolutely.
it resonates with the world. So thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Haley. Great meeting you.
Yeah.
You too. Thank you.